Hello and welcome to the Idaho Reports podcast. I'm Logan Finney. Idaho state law starting on July 1st of 2024 now requires reasonable age verification methods for individual users seeking adult websites, or most commonly referred to as porn sites, where content is sexually explicit and the state legislature has decided it is not appropriate for children. Here to discuss that new law and some of the age verification methods and issues that come with them is Molly Buckley. She's a legal fellow at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Molly, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
To orient us here, Molly, can you introduce me to EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and the sort of work you guys do?
Yeah, the Electronic Frontier Foundation is a nonprofit, nonpartisan org working on digital rights. So we work to protect your digital rights and just keep the internet safe and fun to use generally. This includes things like fighting against police surveillance, fighting against federal surveillance, protecting your rights as a consumer online, and protecting your privacy and security.
So we here at Idaho Reports, obviously we cover Idaho state government. Are you able to give me some more context of what the picture is looking like nationally in this arena? Because Idaho is one of just many states that have been looking at this kind of public policy area this last year or two.
Yeah, definitely. Idaho's bill is one of, I believe, 11, something like 11 bills that passed across the country just this session. By my last count, we have something like 19 total state bills. We've had 12 of these types of age verification bills defeated, and there's 4 bills that are still outstanding. And so there's really a ton of these out there. The issue of sort of protecting kids online via these age verification bills is a popular one this year, as it can be quite difficult optically for legislators in an election year to vocally oppose a bill called something like, the Kids Online Safety Act or Protect the Kids Online or things like that. It looks rough sometimes for legislators to oppose bills like that. However, protecting the children from the latest moral panic has long been an easy and largely bipartisan issue for them to fall back on. So for that reason, it's really important to look really closely at the technology and the harms that it creates to adult speech and to just the wellness of our online public sphere generally. Legislators have been trying to use this issue for years, so this is just the latest in a long line of moral panics. We've seen everything from like hip hop to video games to comic books and teddy bears, social media, harmful online content, that kind of a thing is just the latest.
There is that angle, and here in Idaho, it was kind of part of a push where we've also had a lot of discussion around sexual content in library materials and LGBTQ themes and that sort of thing. So it was almost kind of a hand-in-hand attempt from the legislature this year, trying to limit children's access to that type of material in public library settings, as well as, on their devices in the home.
Right. And either way, the main problem with these things is that the Supreme Court and lower federal courts have clearly and consistently ruled that these age verification schemes, these bans on content with regard to children, are unconstitutional due to the burdens that they impose on adults' First Amendment rights.
Okay, yeah, let's dig into that a little bit more, because when it comes to the actual state laws, they're kind of vague on the details. They kind of leave it up to these adult websites to decide what sort of we'll say like third-party contractor they're going to use to do the actual identifying and checking of ages. So for someone who hasn't, interacted with one of these tools online before, can you tell me how these verification services work and what they generally look like?
Yeah. So Idaho's bill allows for a variety of methods of, as you said, quote, reasonable age verification. And this could include either submitting a government ID like a driver's license or even a digital version of a driver's license to the platform or to a third-party commercial age verification vendor, so a company that does this for the platform. Or it could be, so you would either submit your government ID or something like that, or it could be the platform or the service could rely on what's called private or public transactional data to confirm your identity. And this could include things like your social security number, a mortgage or a bank statement, or even a credit report. So you have either government ID or this public or private transactional data. Then, in order to confirm that you actually are who your credit report or your government ID says you are, the age verification vendor would also usually need to couple that with something called a liveness check. which is usually done with some sort of biometric scan. So like you would submit a selfie photo or video that would allow the service to scan your face and confirm that, yes, you who is sitting behind the computer trying to access our service is the same you that you have submitted on your ID or your transactional data.
Okay, that's super helpful. And we're seeing these sort of tools crop up online, kind of in the digital space, in more places than just checking someone is older than age 18 to look at porn, right? This is kind of happening all over the place online.
Yeah. Yeah, it is happening in a number of different contexts. The bottom line is that no matter what purpose they're being mandated for, because any sort of age verification and to bar access to anything online will prevent millions of US adults who do not or cannot access a valid form of ID from accessing protected materials online. So no matter what the purpose is, these are going to cause a constitutional problem. And so we at EFF oppose any sort of age verification mandate currently. But in terms of other contexts other than porn where we're seeing these tools deployed, it's in some cases, for example, legislators are trying to deploy these tools in order to implement a flat out social media ban for minors. Other states are even using them to implement bans on features like autoplay or recommendations or liking or other features that you may have heard getting painted by legislators in the press as addictive. But even where, like in Idaho, where these age verification measures are mandated for the ostensible purpose of keeping kids away from porn, there's still problems with that because it's not just called porn, it's called harmful content. And the definition, as you said, is extremely vague, which allows the state, Idaho in this case, but across the country, it could be any state, to determine for itself what it views as harmful or adult. So in some states that don't have sexual education, that have abstinent-only, curricula, this might include things like sexual education material that you might find in a library or online, crucially, especially if, you're a kid just seeking some answers to questions that every kid, especially every teenager, as you age, every adolescent will one day have. So in one sense, a state that says that stuff is harmful is going to censor that. Another example would be LGBTQ plus content. Something more and more legislators have come out and said that they consider that to be harmful to minors. So basically because of the vagueness of these definitions in bills like this one, of what harmful or adult content even is and what platforms that applies to, it's going to lead platforms to drastically over-censor themselves and prevent access or just cut out that type of content in general if there's a question as to whether they're over or under a third adult material like in this bill. It's in any case, that level of over-censorship poses a First Amendment concern.
Sure, you kind of referenced the First Amendment a couple times now, and my understanding is adults have a constitutionally protected right to access speech broadly and sexual speech like pornography in particular, and the government is not able to infringe on that right if there's a less restrictive way of going about that. So kind of one of the ideas that I've heard is rather than make it so users have to submit their ID to a website every time they want to use or log into a website where they're supposed to be of age. Instead, some have pushed for some sort of credentialing that's based on the device, so that a device that belongs to a minor would not be allowed to access these sort of websites. And I'm curious what your view is of shifting that burden from the user interacting with the website to the user's device that they're actually, holding physically in their hands.
Yeah, so this is a newer kind of conversation. It's not something that I have personally looked into directly, but my colleagues at EFF, which include technologists who are looking into this stuff all the time, believe that all device-based verification does is transfer that potential privacy harm vector from the platform and whatever third-party age verification vendor that they use to the device and its manufacturer. So the same burdens on access, in terms of proving who you are to now it's your cell phone company, the manufacturer, and the device itself, it just gets transferred. And then furthermore, in addition to those First Amendment burdens on speech and your access, there's also those privacy and security issues that apply. What is keeping T-Mobile or Samsung from preventing a huge data breach in a different way that Facebook or something like, Pornhub would be able to? the same sort of privacy and security issues apply in terms of preventing inadvertent disclosures of this highly sensitive and immutable or unchangeable data. When you're submitting your actual face and your government ID to these websites, you want to be 100% certain that it is going to be safe. And as you see from headlines about data breach after data breach after data breach, especially recently, there's just no guaranteed way to do this either on websites or on devices right now.
Sure, and I guess one of the arguments that we heard at the legislature this year was that the legislation requires that these companies don't hold on to this type of data. But would you say that that doesn't really address the security concerns there?
That is an attempt to address security concerns for sure. The Idaho bill in particular has that data retention mandate or data deletion mandate apply to not only the platforms, the services themselves who provide sort of adult content, but also to third-party vendors that have a role in this age verification process. And that is a good attempt. However, in any online interaction, any online transaction, there's an unknown, unseen, unknowable amount of third-party intermediaries like pixel trackers that you might see from Facebook on a website, like on a news website. There's so many different entities that are tracking you and so many different entities that are privy to any sort of transaction like that of data online, that even having a deletion requirement apply as against the platform and as against their hired third-party commercial service, age verification service, that's still not guaranteeing that there aren't any other intermediaries who are not at all subject to this law who could get access to that data and have no requirement to delete it, to not sell it to data brokers, to not, do even more nefarious things with it.
And am I right in thinking that this would be an exceptionally valuable prize for a hacker in that these are not just like scans of a photo ID identity document, but also, it's paired with this verification of, say, a selfie camera scan of somebody's face saying, yes, we're pretty confident that this is their digital fingerprint?
Yes, 100%. The online age verification exposes users to the risk of data breaches, of phishing scams, identity theft, and all sorts of resulting harms IRL in real life, like stalking or blackmail, or even we've seen forcible outing of LGBTQIA plus identity. These things happen all the time. The data these bills are requiring platforms to collect is extremely sensitive. It's unique to each user. And as I said, it's immutable or unchangeable. So if you are one of these victims of a breach or of an inadvertent disclosure by the age verification vendor company, it's going to be tough to get a new state ID, mortgage statement, or social security number. It's going to be impossible to get a new face to use in the biometric checks, which confirm that you are who your ID says you are. And this has been confirmed in all sorts of studies. Privacy experts have said that the tech just isn't there yet to do this while ensuring users' privacy, security, and anonymity online.
Okay. Well, one final question for you. As we're seeing the success of bills like these in Idaho and other states, what is on the EFF's radar looking forward? Is there any murmuring of something like this at the federal level in Congress, or are you still keeping an eye on state by state moves? What's kind of the new frontier in this realm of identity and age verification online?
This is not only a huge issue domestically, but it's also a global issue right now. In some countries, they've already passed these type of bills, and platforms are, just as as we predicted, struggling to comply, to figure out whether they apply to them and how to do this in a way that protects user security and limits platforms' liability and victims' exposure to things like data breaches and the other harms. So at EFF, we are looking not only, we've got people looking across the world at how these things are being enacted and what we can do to protect users, but also, in addition to state bills domestically, there is a bill called KOSA, or the Kids Online Safety Act, that has been popping up in some way or form, going through the legislative process with various amendments for years now. EFF continues to oppose that because there is no safe way to do age verification online, and these bills will do so much more harm to the very youth that these legislators are saying that they want to protect than they will help them.
All right. Well, Molly Buckley, legal fellow at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, thank you so much for your time this week.
Thank you, Logan. Nice to talk to you.
Celebrating 75 years of science and innovation, Idaho National Laboratory's 6,200 researchers and support staff are advancing the nation's nuclear research, renewable energy systems, and cybersecurity solutions. Presentation of Idaho Reports on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.